let's start next session. Open forum with Sikyong, Dr. Lobang Sangay. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Kobayashi from Japan, and president of Japan Committee for Tibet. It was very oldest Tibet supporting group in Japan. And also, I'm a vice president of Super Sangha. It is a Japanese monks group to help Tibet. We have about 150 members. And my English is not so good enough. So I like ask Mrs. Ishii. She can speak English very fluently, so she can help me. And she's a wife of Mr. Ishii. He's a vice president of Free India, Indo-Pacific, Free India Pacific Alliance. Also, La Galila of the Tibetan Parliament is also a vice president of Free India Pacific Alliance. And Mr. Temuchirto from Mongolia is also vice president. So all of the three vice presidents of FIPA are now attending this conference. So next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lobang Sangay. Dr. Lobang Sangay, President, Central Tibetan Administration, was born in 1968 in a Tibetan settlement near Darjeeling. Dr. Sangay completed his primary and secondary education from Central School for Tibetans in Darjeeling and earned his BA degree in English literature and LLB degree at the Delhi University. As a Fulbright scholar, he was the first ever Tibetan to earn the Doctor of Juridical Science degree from Harvard Law School in 2004. In 2007, he was selected as one of the 24 young leaders of Asia by the Asia Society. In 2011, he became the first elected political leader after His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's development from political leadership and won a second term in 2016. So please.
I think it's open mic, so you all are free to ask any questions. And if you don't have any questions, that makes my job a lot easier. I just want to touch on this morning. I gave my speech, then forgot to acknowledge my very capable Department of Information and International Relations staff members, who have been dedicating their time and resources to organize this conference. As some of you told me, it's quite efficiently organized of international standard. So if that's the case, I think all the credits go to our staff. And by the way, we have brand new Secretary of International Relations, Kamachwingla. Yeah. He just took over a few days ago, and he's going through baptism by fire. He's in the midst of this organization. And Ariala, Information Secretary. Ariala, yes. And rest of them, you met Chuki, Dukniki, I can see all of them down there. And then the person who is actually in charge is Donze. Where is she? Donze. Yeah, she always shies away, doesn't like spotlight. And yesterday at the dinner reception, I said, I'm not speaking, no one is speaking, only you have to speak. And for the first time, she came out and spoke. So we have staff like that, who don't like the limelight, who doesn't want to come in front, take mics, but do all the work. Donze is down there. Yes, everybody, now you all receive email from her. And can I call it intern? Oh, she's in the office. She has, assistant working with her. She's in the office. You can clearly see they're working very hard. And all the DIR staff, our media people, everybody. So do give them another round of applause, which is applause for my department. And two of my cabinet colleagues, Kama Gelala and Pema Yangjela, Education Minister and Minister of Religion and Culture, are sitting through the whole day to show solidarity with all the participants here and also learn few things. And if you're interested to meet them, please, they're here. And this morning I was reminded when I mentioned 8 and all that, I completely forgot because I'm more of an extempore speaker. And as I was going through the 1990s resolution, I literally counted on stage here. I said, oh, it's 8. Then I started linking 888, I said all the 8 stories. Then I completely forgot the most important part. 8th Tibet Support Group International Conference, 8 resolutions, and this year we'll have 8 action plans, right? And in next 8 years, we will succeed. As a symbol, I was told that actually we have 8 auspicious symbols, Tibetan auspicious symbols. I was reminded, I forgot to mention that. So it's all 8 action plans, 8 auspicious symbols blessing us and leading us. I think we will have auspicious results. Why? Coincidentally, you saw the Kanki gate, right? When you enter this side of the place, the gate is being constructed. Did you see that? For the first time on 2 sides, we have 8 auspicious symbols. So all these things are saying something. I think so. Huh? Oh, now he's going one step further. He's saying it's the date November 3rd to 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. Now, I hope you all will not dream about 8. You please don't come back tomorrow morning and say, I dreamt 8, I had 8 chocolates on my bed. But anyway, so 8 has some meaning, I think so. Any questions? Okay. We have a former speaker of Australia. The mic. Mic thingy. Give this mic. I had diffusion. Mic needs some schoonshire there.
Peter Slipper, former Speaker of the Australian Parliament and a member of the Parliament, along with Michael Danby for more than 20 years. My question is really a question of Buddhist theology, and it relates in particular to the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I realise that I think His Holiness has made a statement saying that it's inconceivable that his reincarnation would be discovered in an occupied country. And my question, though, is it possible under Buddhist theology for His Holiness to be reincarnated during His Holiness's lifetime on earth? So, in other words, the Tibetan government and the Tibetan community and Buddhist people would be able, while His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama is alive, to discover his reincarnation and make sure that the reincarnation is not stolen by the Chinese. The Roman Catholics, for instance, have a Pope Emeritus and they have a Pope. Is it possible, sir, under Buddhist theology, for such an outcome to be achieved, whereby His Holiness could be reincarnated and the next Dalai Lama discovered while the current Dalai Lama, His Holiness, continues to do such a worldwide and admirable job for everyone in the world?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Now, we have Minister of Religion and Culture sitting here. I should not touch too much in religion, you know. Having said that, the idea of reincarnation or incarnation is there in Buddhism and also in Hinduism. But the immediate reincarnation, when someone passes away, someone is reborn immediately to take over the previous position, I think was invented or discovered by Tibetans. So hence the idea of reincarnation that we are talking about, the Tukku school, it's in the Tibetan school of Buddhism. Now, we have few forms of reincarnation, you can call that. And in September 2011, His Holiness Office has released a statement in which he has laid out that his reincarnation could come through three ways. One, reincarnation, which is someone has to pass away, then an infant is born, and after 5 or 6 years will be recognized. Second is selection, which has not happened before, could happen. Like the cardinals meeting and selecting the Pope, High Lamas will meet and select the next Dalai Lama after the passing away. Third is emanation. There is the school where one could designate his own successor while you're alive. So that person will not be the Dalai Lama, but an emanation. So we do have that system, and which is not the general rule. In several cases, we have lamas come through emanation process. So before one passing away, I'll designate him to be my successor. So we have that. And we also have female reincarnation. Phagmo, Doje Phagmo, is a female reincarnation. Because some people will ask me later, can there be a woman Dalai Lama? Can there be Spanish or American or Chilean Dalai Lama? You know, technically there can be, but Dalai Lama has to be, he's the 14th because all were male will be male. And Doje Phagmo was female. You cannot have male Doje Phagmo reincarnation. So Doje Phagmo reincarnation will continue to be female reincarnation. Now he will be born in exile if Tibet issue is not resolved while he's alive, because the idea of reincarnation is to continue the mission and the vision from where he left. So if he leaves the Tibetan movement in exile, in a free country, he has to be born where we left. So that's why if Tibet issue is not resolved, then he will be born in exile. And he has declared so that he would be born in a free country, not in occupied Tibet. Professor of Hong Kong.
I would like to raise a question about negotiations with the Chinese authorities. In the first place, the past negotiations certainly have not been very successful. What were the difficulties in such negotiation processes? What were the difficulties for resulting in lack of progress? Now your administration still insists on negotiations. Why do you still seek this way of negotiations? And why do you think the Chinese authorities have not yet responded enthusiastically, positively to your proposal of negotiations? Thank you very much.
Why we insist on negotiation is because we follow nonviolence as our path. So if your path is nonviolence, then dialogue is the process through which you have to solve the issue. If dialogue is the process, you have to take into consideration other side's interests and your side interests. And China says sovereignty and territorial integrity cannot be compromised. One China cannot be compromised. And hence we say, okay, we will come meet your way, you come and meet our way. And that's why we seek genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people. So nonviolence means dialogue. So that's why we are trying to reach the middle ground. Now, why, what were the reasons why there was no breakthrough? Number one, China insists that Tibet, His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetan people should say that Tibet was always part of China. And His Holiness has said, history is history. He can't change it. And this morning we launched the book, which is authored by a Chinese professor based on Tunghua, the Chinese archival materials, Chinese materials, which says that Tibet was an independent country, even from Chinese sources. So His Holiness said, history is history. He can't change it. It's for historians to debate. So that's one condition. But essentially, we have had, for 1980s, we had 4 fact-finding delegations of exile leaders going to Tibet, various parts of Tibet. So we have had that, contacts. And from 2002 to 2010, there were 9 rounds of formal dialogue between the envoys of the Dalai Lama and representative of Chinese government. But there was never a breakthrough. So it was not negotiation. It was pre-negotiation, trying to understand issues. And they could never come down to what are the key issues that they want to resolve. So that was the main reason there was no breakthrough.
Sir, my question is, since the Chinese are adamant to not hold a dialogue, what can make them hold a dialogue? What will make them understand that they must hold a dialogue? What is the answer? What process or procedure, please? Thank you.
Now, we have had dialogue before, as I said, 9 rounds of dialogue. So there are 2 theories. One is when China becomes strong and confident, they might handle issues like Tibet through dialogue. Or when China is weak and vulnerable, then they might want to address 1 or 2 issues, which includes Tibet. So you have to pick. But if you look at the past contacts we have had with the Chinese government, often when they were weak or vulnerable, that's when they talk to us. And one theory is that the dialogue between envoys of the Dalai Lama and representative of Chinese government in 2002 happened because the Chinese government was negotiating to get Olympics. And soon after the Olympics was over, in 2009, there was a breakdown and there was no breakthrough. So why they should talk to us is because China wants to be a global power. They want to be respected. And if you want to be respected, you have to show respect to Tibetans. So you must earn credibility. And by solving the issue of Tibet, you can, send a message loud and clear to international community and to neighboring countries as well that we meant peace. We want to solve this complicated issue, through dialogue. The Tibet issue has been going on for 60 years. The repression is not working. 153 Tibetans have committed self-immolation. It's not at all working. And it brings bad image and more bad image to the Chinese government. And resistance in Tibet will continue. So the repressive policies that they had over the last 60 years is not working. It's failing. So the best way is to find a mutually agreeable solution. So there are many reasons, but these are the few reasons why China should enter into dialogue to solve the issue of Tibet. And I don't think they can get someone like His Holiness Dalai Lama, who is as reasonable, as moderate, as compassionate. And he is the best partner that the Chinese government can get as far as resolving the issue of Tibet is concerned. Once you have an agreement with him, 99% of Tibetans in Tibet will also agree. It's difficult to get into agreement. And then it's more difficult to implement that agreement, you see. With His Holiness, it's easy to get an agreement and more easy to implement it if he is on board. So the Chinese government has very good opportunity with His Holiness Dalai Lama as their partner, if they choose to.
So as one of my friends here rightly put it across to me some times ago, that we Tibetans very often prefer to ask questions than a question, so kindly allow me to follow the same. This is a question requested by one of my friends in Nepal, which I believe would be of value to all the Tibet support groups present here, especially given the ongoing collaboration and cooperation with China. Since we are aware of Nepal's recent act on extradition law, I recently learned that it wasn't a complete withdrawal, but it's been put on hold temporarily. The prevailing documentation issue of Tibetans in Nepal is of serious concern. Mr. President, how does the CTA view this problem, and what are the measures required, and how can the Tibet support groups present here help alleviate this problem?
My birthplace, as I was introduced, is from Darjeeling, which is next to Nepal. And talking about karma, it's very interesting, actually. I was born in Darjeeling. I speak Nepali, and I've been to Nepal so many times. And after assuming my position, the first place, or one of the very first places that I should be going is to Nepal. It's law of karma that I'm banned from entering Nepal, right? And another thing, when I was in the US, my primary focus was dialogue, reaching out to Chinese, talking to Chinese, organizing track 2, track 3, diplomacy and conferences. I've met hundreds and thousands of Chinese. But after assuming my position, I'm being listed as quote-unquote terrorist or separatist, one thing that I'm not able to break through is the dialogue. So it's all karma, something I was prepared or preparing for, or I tried to train myself for. I didn't train myself to be in charge of construction and all that, but I've been doing a lot of construction here in Gangjin, Sikyong, and fundraising and all those stuff, administrative matter. Now, Nepal also is a very sad case. I know the situation very well. Since 1990, any Tibetan who was born in Nepal are not issued a residency card. So they don't exist. Their mobility, their travel, their education, even to get jobs, it's very difficult, very difficult. Now, we are doing the best we can through embassies. For example, the present US ambassador to Nepal is very strong. And Swiss embassies, a few other European embassies are making efforts. When the CODEL, led by Speaker Nancy Pelosi, then opposition leader, she led the delegation to Nepal also, met President, Prime Minister, everybody. They all said the same thing. Congressman Jim McGovern told me later. They said the Chinese pressure is so strong that they can't do much for Tibetans. So Congressman Jim McGovern told them, so you're saying the American pressure is not enough. So what you're saying is, under pressure, you do things. Then now you want us to put pressure on you too. America gives a lot of aid. So recently we had the US Ambassador for Religious Freedom here in Dharamshala at our invitation. And he was going to Nepal. I asked him, please meet our representative in Nepal and meet some Tibetans there too. And he went. He went to the reception center, met representative there, and publicly demonstrated US government concern and support for Tibetan people. So we are doing the best we can, and to get what we call residency certificate. But I know it's with the Nepali government, but because of the pressure of the Chinese government, they are not issuing that residency certificate. Now, what we could do is whatever funding we receive from America, especially PRM, what we have said is Tibetans in Nepal is only 10% of the Tibetan population in India. But we will allocate 20% of our budget from the PRM. So we've been sending 20% of the budget for all the welfare-related projects. And we have also said any Tibetan family, if they cannot educate the children in Nepal, they can send them to India and we'll give them free education. If transportation is also needed, we will provide that. And we have had 2 closed-door special meetings for Tibetans. And we have listed all the things that they want. We did that in my first term, and we did that recently as well. And we are fulfilling, as far as welfare projects are concerned, we are more or less fulfilling most of the projects that they want. But given the political scenario, it's very difficult to get the residence certificate. But all the time, when I go to DC, Europe, anywhere, we always raise this issue of Tibetans in Nepal. Yeah. Tony and Vijay Karanti. Yes?
Can I?
Yes, from South Africa. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me just thank your representative from South Africa. He's doing a good job. It's a man that works so hard. I want to tell you a short story. A few months back, we have him in our university, and we did a conference that he spoke, and he spoke so well. And we decided to take a couple of pamphlets from the Tibet office and place in certain strategic positions in the university for people to get awareness. And bet you, the next week, in each of the places that we put the pamphlet, we saw China daily in every of those places. So it then gave me this thinking that, it means this thing, it's not as easy as one may think. Hence, it's my first time to have a physical contact with the Tibetan community, which the question I want to ask, I feel that this is the right place to ask. And the question is very simple, because we just arrived with my colleague this afternoon, and our mind is tired, but we will ask just simple questions. Now, the question I want to ask is this. In every struggle, whether be it for liberation, be it for autonomy, there are two aspects. The aspect of legality and the aspect of political reality. The aspect of legality, anybody can claim legality because it's part of international jurisprudence. We can say we are a community, we are a nation. Now the small question I'm asking is that outside Chinese imperial design, what is the political reality that interplays against the Tibetan people? And what do you want as Tibetans?
Did you say against Tibetan people?
Let me rephrase the question. Outside Chinese imperial design, what is the nature of political reality that interplays against you, the Tibetans?
I think it's the same as what South Africa went through during apartheid regime and post-apartheid regime. Political reality changes. And if you read the newspapers or the news media writings of Nelson Mandela in 1980s, I think there were few obituaries written about him. Forget about restoring democracy in South Africa, he cannot free himself from the prison. Same thing was written about Václav Havel. Forget about restoring independence of Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. He will never see freedom himself. And I remember asking, I think in Lithuania, his father was an activist, and he was asked the same question. What do you think of Lithuania's independence? He was an activist. So he asked, in 100 years, political reality is we might become independent, but we hope we will be free in 50 years. But 2 years later, Lithuania became free, So the political reality, you ask, shifts and changes. This morning you were not here. So in 1990s, Tibet was one of the major international issues. And then in between, China grew its economy and military strength and political strength. And then, many countries sided with China and less with Tibet. Now, in the last few years, the discourse is changing in various parts of the world, including in Japan. For example, 15 years ago, political reality of Japan was that they would not even mention Tibet politically. Now, political reality now is Japan has the largest parliamentary support group in the whole world. 92 members of Parliament of Japan is part of the Tibet support group. So in April 2012, when I went there, one of my main hosts was Shinzo Abe, the present Prime Minister of Japan. 6 months later, he got elected as the Prime Minister, and then maybe I can say that with his blessing, He established the largest parliamentary group, of which 60 to 70% are from the ruling party. And recently in Czech Republic, we have the largest parliamentary group in Europe is in Czech Republic, 51 members of parliament. I think it's the Czech guy clapping, Just recently, I was officially hosted by the Czech Senate, and of the 6 vice presidents, 4 came. And a few months ago, we had an official delegation from German Bundestag. 3 members came here. And then a few months ago, we have 6 members of US Congress officially came here. So, political reality keeps changing. One day you are for us, next day you are not, and a few days later you support us. So we have to change the political reality like the South Africans did, like the Czech did, like the Europeans did, like the Northern Ireland did, like the Burmese did. So our turn is next. So for us, we are Buddhists. Reality is impermanent. Everything is interdependent. So based on impermanence, everything changes. And we will change our political reality too, my friend. Okay?
Rudy Svaryček, Czech Republic. I'm really happy to listen that you speak so nicely about Czech Republic. Thank you so much. Thank you. But my question is, the Serta monastery, Larungar is the biggest monastery on the planet. It's like a big symbol. When I was first time in Serta, the Chinese police catch me and squeeze me, push me to the car full of the policemen. I don't know what's going on, how long I will be in the prison or what will happen. When I came next time to Serta, it was totally different story. Now it's a big place for a scout warrior. It's a totally different place. Supposed to be there maybe 55,000 monks. The biggest, let's say, monastery, biggest symbol. But last time you spoke about 200 Chinese there. My question is, what do you think about the future of Serta, which is quite important for like symbol of Tibet? Thank you.
Yes, Serta, where Larungar is, originated as a retreat place for the main master. And because he was spending some time there, all his followers from all over Tibet, including China, came there. So at one time, it's estimated that there were 20,000 resident monks and nuns, of which few thousands were Chinese. But during annual teaching, they used to have anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 people come there during annual teachings. So it was that big. So the Chinese government saw, this talk of religious freedom, they saw as a threat, and then they demolish it. So half the Larungar is gone. The remaining half is divided in 2 parts, academic part and the monastic part. And they have stationed 200 Communist Party members to monitor ins and outs of the Larungar monastery. So they are definitely restricting. And then it's nothing new. If you look at our monasteries in 1950s, before 1963, 98% of Tibetan monasteries and nunneries were destroyed. 99.9% of monks and nuns were disrobed. So if you look at near Lhasa, Sera, Gandhin, Drepung, 3 major monasteries, you used to have anywhere from 3,000, 6,000 monks mainly. Now it's reduced to 50 to 100 to 200 monks. So they have done it before, like this. Phase by phase, they will destroy all our monasteries. But in private and social space, Tibetans are asserting themselves and building their own monasteries and practicing Buddhism. So in 1950s, they destroyed 98% of monasteries. Now, monasteries are back in Tibet, and some are as large as Larungar, some are as large as Yashingar nunnery with 5,000 nuns. So no matter how repressive and destructive the policies are, Tibetan people have resisted and rebuilt their monasteries and nunneries. So Buddhism is back in Tibet. And interestingly, China has also become the largest Buddhist country in the world. 300 million Chinese are Buddhist. And 90% of tourists going to Tibet are Chinese. So it's interesting at people's level. So this is where we are. Hence, we always say why we are confident is, when you look at the competition between communism and Buddhism, only commonality is Communism also, they claim to be read in their head. Buddhism read in their robes, Other than that, Buddhism is 2,500 years old. Communism is 100 years old. There was no competition to begin with. We were set to win. Yeah? And we have won the spiritual part. We have rebuilt our monasteries, revived Buddhism in Tibet, in exile, around the world. China has also become a Buddhist country. So hence, as His Holiness said, they should find the reincarnation of Mao Zedong and Chou En-lai. They will love it. There are so many Buddhists who are Chinese, right? So they'll find their places. So yes, Larungar, we should worry. Yashingar, we should worry. And all other major monasteries, we should worry. They will demolish one by one. So that's why we should make as loud noise as possible. We should highlight these issues everywhere so that there could be a small deterrence on the part of Chinese government not to demolish these major monasteries in Tibet.
My question is about dialogue. In 1999, the European Parliament passed a resolution and gave an ultimatum to the government of China. If you don't start dialogue with His Holiness Dalai Lama in 3 years, then we'll recognize Dharamshala as the government of Tibet. China didn't act on it, but in the last days, they acted because they were worried. But after 2002 to 2008, the dialogue went on. My fear is that Chinese were played very cleverly on that. It was only preparation for the dialogue. So in these 6 years, they used this period for achieving all those goals which they wanted to increase their grip on Tibet. For example, the road network was completed, air network was completed, and then dumping of or bringing in of Han Chinese in so much numbers that almost every Tibetan town or city has become Chinese. Tibetans are a meaningless minority in many of those cities. And then their military establishment has taken over, so all controls are in their hands. By 2008, of course, they needed goodwill for Olympics, so they continued. My question is, after achieving all these goals, why China should be interested in having dialogue with you?
You can never tell when one enters into dialogue. If you study any conflict resolution, for example, Northern Ireland is a case where people of same faith were killing each other, and then many people thought it's an intractable, impossible situation where people of same God were killing each other over some issues. And finally there was a Good Friday Agreement. I remember talking to people who were part of the negotiation. I said, why? They were so tired of killing each other, they talked. But this is like dialogue analysis. So if you study any conflict resolution, there is no one reason why they will enter into dialogue. But I can give you a couple of reasons. One could be, say, now the Chinese government is facing pressure from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, from Xinjiang, from Inner Mongolia, trade war. All the neighboring countries are, putting pressure on China. That, if you follow the Pew Research survey, the favorability rating of China, even 5 years ago, was 60 to 75% in various parts of the world, including Canada and Sweden. Now it has gone down back to 30% or 40%. So, you will never know. So for all these reasons, they will say, okay, we have to do something to change this image and reverse the trend of backlash. They might pick Tibet, or they might pick Hong Kong, or they might pick Taiwan. So there can be many theories as to why they might do it, And then equal arguments can be made that they will not do so because they want to strong, they want to assert, they want to bully around, and they want to put pressure. So one can never know. Having said that, we have to find a solution to the Tibet issue. We pursue nonviolence, And international community also asks us, what do you want? What can we do for you? I say, we want to enter into dialogue to solve the issue of Tibet peacefully, hence we want your support. So we also need a narrative and a movement too, right? Now, some people will say, those who advocate independence, even if you enter into dialogue, even if you find a solution, like Hong Kong, one country, two system, there is more regression after that one basic law was adopted, right? If you say that, we say, yeah, we know that very well. We signed 17-point agreement. The day it was signed, regression took place, and by 1959, it was impossible to leave, and His Holiness Dalai Lama had to leave. So we have been through that before. So when you say enter into dialogue, doesn't mean that we like Chinese government or we trust Chinese government. No, we have a cold political reality. We have to solve this issue because 6 million Tibetans in Tibet are suffering. If there is anything we can do to alleviate their suffering, change the trends in Tibet, we should make efforts. So that's why. That's our interest, yeah. Yes?
Yeah. Mr. Sikyong, you said to support Tibet is pro-justice and non-violence. So supporting Tibetans are the fight for non-violence versus hatred. So, as we know, His Holiness Dalai Lama has been promoting a sea learning program in the world. So our question is, do you think how it helps for the world to help Tibetan issues?
Yes,
and how?
that's
if
true.
your
Still
answer
learning,
is,
I know.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you think does it help for the world to support Tibet?
Yes.
And if
Now
your answer is yes, and how? And how? Thank you.
You're trying to trap me here. So there is His Holiness Dalai Lama, and there is Tibet issue. Okay, these are linked in many ways, and also different in some ways, because His Holiness is a global leader, messenger of peace, advocate of nonviolence, advocate of religious harmony, and environmental preservation. He's all that. Because he does all these things, it does help Tibet. And many of our friends come to know His Holiness, his teachings, that they like him, and they come and support us, right? So it's a fact. So we do benefit a lot. And still learning is social, emotional, and ethical learning. The curriculum His Holiness has launched. Essentially, modern education, it says, modern education emphasizes on ambition and on success and educating your brain. So that's the metrics and measurement. You must have ambition, you must succeed, and livelihood is the main goal. But His Holiness is not complete. If you have, but then through modern education, the results are that someone is socially imbalanced, emotionally disturbed, and ethically questionable, because these are never taught. So when you become a political leader, you're socially imbalanced, you abuse power, you're emotionally disturbed, my goodness, staff will have tough time, and you see some leaders doing that. And then you're ethically questionable, you lead to corruption. So even if you're a business leader, if you don't have these three balanced, then you resort to corruption and abuses, right? So in any field, even if you're a teacher, in classroom, if you are yourself is emotion not balanced, and how are you going to teach your students? So hence, His Holiness says, in addition to this modern education system, we need to add this element, educating the heart, so that you are socially balanced and emotionally balanced and ethically sound. If you have that, not only you become a successful professional, but also a good human being. So not only you will be a charismatic leader, but also a kind leader. Not only you will be a successful business person, but you will be a compassionate and generous business person. So this, His Holiness' idea is to contribute to the world. Now through that, if someone says, oh, I learned a lot from Tibetans, so based on law of karma, I must give back something to the Tibetan cause. If they join us, we welcome that, but it's not quid pro quo. His Holiness, we share it with the rest of the world for free. But in the process, if you learn, if you benefit something and you want to help Tibetan cause. We welcome you. If you don't help us, no complaints. So, through seal learning, some friends might come, some friends might not come. If they come, welcome. If they don't come, no problem. But it's a good education curriculum, and the Delhi government has launched it to, I don't know, around 1,000 public schools. In a year time, it has become a very successful curriculum. It's called Curriculum of Happiness. Mexico City has launched it. Chile, I think 36 or 7 countries have launched this curriculum. And from all accounts, it's widely received, and teachers are benefiting a lot, and thereby the students. So the millennial generation will be better people in the long run. That's the contribution of the Tibetan cause. Tibetan people primarily saw in this dialogue.
So, Sikyong, like just to add a little bit on what you were saying about e-learning, we were successful in Mexico at participating at the design of the new official educational curriculum of our government that has emphasized social emotional learning, and all of the design of that program came from Tibet House, and we've reached about 50,000 teachers with that in the last 4 years. So it's something that is very influential now. But I had a couple of questions for you. First, over the years, in the dialogue that has been held with the People's Republic of China, we have not found a sympathetic, medium in order to be able to discuss in a more open and receptive way the Tibetan issue. But I've always wondered if, at least in this time, is there somebody within the Chinese official government structure that is sympathetic to the Tibetan cause, or at least open to discuss it in an intelligent and empathetic way? That's one question. And the other one is if there's a place, a country of transcendent importance for the Tibetan refugees is India. And India has also been the object of tremendous Chinese pressure. What is the state of that pressure and your ability also to maintain a positive relationship with the Indian government now? If you could clarify these two things, please.
I'll take the second question first. As far as government of India is concerned, Tibetans, we have been here for the last 60 years. Various parties have formed government, and their treatment of Tibetan people has always remained the same. So they have always been very supportive. So no government, no country has done for Tibetans like India, because largest number of Tibetans are in India. In 1960s, it was a third world country. Even then, they provided us the subsidies and the shelter. So hence, we rebuilt our monasteries, our schools, settlements, everything because of India. So we really don't see much changes. And in recent years, we are in touch with Delhi. Their support and outlook remains the same. And then in the long run too, given China and India, given their complex relationship, I think they have some areas where they can cooperate, like business and few area culture, and some areas there will be competition. So as long as this competition and cooperation remains, and Tibet issue will be part, will be part of the discourse. But I don't think the Indian government will change in any shape or form, because again, in recent years, Tibet issue has become a mass issue and geostrategic issue. When I came in 2011, whenever there was a book published on Indo-China relationship, there used to be a quote or two or page or two about Tibet. Now you see various books, chapters after chapters on Tibet, on Indo-China relationship. So it has become a more important, more aware, and people in Delhi, both in the intellectuals and in the media, it has become one important issue. I think we really don't see much changes as far as Delhi is concerned. I think their support will continue to be the same. Now, as for your first question on dialogue, I think this definitely after lunch, right? The main point it skipped me. What was the main point?
If you've ever found, especially now, is there anybody?
That's true. Now, recently, His Holiness Dalai Lama shared some confidential issues. He did say he does meet with Chinese Buddhists who come here, former officers who come here, and he also said 1 or 2 officials too. So there's always contacts. Now, whether they are sincere or not, only time will tell, right? But we keep meeting. That way, we are very open. Dharamshala, we always say we are transparent. Any Chinese who wants to come, they can come with us, and we will share, whatever we want to do. But having said that, all these talks that His Holiness had with the Chinese are all informal in nature, and there is no breakthrough. There is no formal dialogue per se. But you will never know who turns out to be the sincere one or not. But we have to keep trying. We have to keep ourselves open. That's what's going on. Okay?
Artistically, Sikyong, I want to preface my question to you by saying thanks for your leadership and your hard work, and also the organizers of the conference. They have put together a very good conference, and I'm very impressed. So I have been very fortunate to be able to serve on leadership roles both in the Tibetan Association communities as well as the Friends of Tibet, on Los Angeles Friends of Tibet. And from my vantage point, I've noticed that the Tibetan communities, most of the associations, they have not been very active politically and in taking part in campaigns and activism. So I wanted to find out what your observation is, and how can we light that fire of urgency in the increasing Tibetan community population in the Northern America. Thank you.
I think Tibetan, immigrants to the West, especially U.S., went through the same immigration experience. First, decade, you're so busy in making your, livelihood, getting your families, and after that, slowly, when you have more spare time, then you started dedicating it to more social efforts and Tibetan community, Tibetan associations. Then they become politically more active. Now you clearly see, I think, Tibetan associations very active politically. Last March 10th was the largest participation of Tibetans all around the world. And in our election too, from 2006 to 16, there was 78% increase in voter participation and voter registration. I think it's one of the very unique democracy where there is an almost 80% increase in voter registration and voter participation in our democracy. And increasingly, Tibetan associations are joining lobbying efforts. So this is part of the pattern that you see, in new immigrants, and I think we will also be very active globally, and you can clearly see signs that they're doing so, and they should do so. Yeah.
When you was in the Tibet House in Italy last July, I was impressed about when you spoke that in Tibet, the Chinese are controlling with very high level of technology, the Tibetan people, and you say, take care, because they can spread this technology all over the world and they are selling it. Can you explain to us such a thing, please?
Now, friends from East Turkestan, Xinjiang are here. The situation in Xinjiang is very bad. We all know that. But the party secretary of Xinjiang was the party secretary of Tibet Autonomous Region. So for 5 years as the party secretary, he executed a lot of repressive projects and policies, and which he transplanted in Xinjiang, and in 12 months' time, he tried to execute it, and then it has blown out of control. So part of that effort was to have a grid system in Tibet. This is how you control. First, you are issued an ID card, very advanced ID card with second-generation biometric chips in it. So when you get that ID card, people say, wow, that's a sign of progress. You have a very advanced ID card. But then they put a lot of checkposts along the way, highways, roads, cities. So each time you swipe your ID, your movement is tracked. So there is a computer which collects all the data. And there is an algorithm and software which reads the data and then projects and predicts which area could have potential protest. Because more travel you have from one nomadic area and one village area, then suddenly the Chinese government will put cameras on the gate of the village or the town and put spies and the moles. So that's how they control things. And then in China generally they have the social credit system, right? Based on your behavior, you're given social credit. If your social credit is high, you get to buy a house, you can travel freely. If your social credit is less, when you swipe your ID, you cannot buy airplane ticket, you cannot fly out of the town. So that's in China. The social credit system was also introduced in Tibet. More ruthless way. If your social credit is low in Tibet, you go to jail. In China, you cannot buy air ticket, you go to jail. So this is the system that they have created. So this is how you control. And then in Soviet Union, there used to be neighborhood watch. 1,000 families, there used to be 5 or 10 people monitoring 1,000 families. They broke it down to 100 families now. Neighborhood watch in Tibet is 100 families, and the monitoring group is done in rotation. So what happens when you do in rotation, each family will suspect the other to be a spy. It creates an element of fear. So this is how you control the whole plateau. There's ID card, there's checkpost, there's camera, there's spies. Obviously, there's police, there's military, and there's algorithm, there's software. Now, this is a very effective tool to control your people through social credit system. Hence, they're exporting it, as per some reports, I think to Ethiopia, Ecuador. Any authoritarian government would like to have this kind of a technology, right? All you need to do is ID card and checkposts and control the whole population. So what happens in Tibet happens in Italy next. So this is how they control. So what happens to us is exported everywhere. So recently in America, it became a big issue, the National Basketball Association, NBA, right? One general manager tweeted a tweet in support of Hong Kong, and he had to delete the tweet, and the owner has to say sorry to the Chinese government because China threatened to cut off their partnership with NBA, and they did for a few months. But when it happened to Tibetans, the Marriott Hotel had one staff put a Tibet support quote on her Facebook, I think. Marriott Hotel fired the staff, and the president went to China to say sorry. We said, look, this is happening on Tibet. You will be next. Tibet is an exception. I know it's bad. Then Mercedes-Benz, one staff put a quote of His Holiness Dalai Lama, kindness, compassion. Just because there was Dalai Lama as his name, he said, Mercedes-Benz, wow, that's wrong. They deleted the quote, and the president of Mercedes went to China to say sorry. We say, hey, international community, you should know what's happening to us. It could happen to you. They say, you are an exception. When it happened to NBA, whole America said, what's happening here? So, the grid system, the Soviet era, which is more manual, now it's high-tech in China and Tibet. And it's coming. It's coming to all over the world. So that's why, I think there was one question. You asked about Tibet, pro-justice, and all that. When I go to Europe and other places, I always say nowadays, when I come to your country, I'm not here to say, save Tibet. Because Tibet is already under occupation. Tibetans are repressed. I'm here to say, save yourself. Please save yourself. Then come to us. Because what's happening in Tibet is happening all over the world. And it's a fact. From Australia to Japan to Europe to Norway, Denmark, South Africa. I was in South Africa. I was giving a talk at Stellenbosch Law School near Cape Town. I will come back. You know what happened? I went to Stellenbosch Law School to give a talk, and I reached there. Suddenly, the dean of the law school got a message from the security head saying there are 100 migrant workers and 30 or 40 Chinese storming the campus to disrupt the talk. And actually, they did. Finally, they entered the auditorium, they entered the stage, chased away all the audience, shouting slogans. And the migrants who were hired, were paid and were served KFC chicken, they didn't know why they were there. They were singing Ole, Ole song outside, right? But they were disturbing. And they had arranged an alternative room for me. And I think 70 or 60% of students came, and I gave a talk there. So when I went out, at the door, I could see from the glass, there were 30 or 40 Chinese shouting at me in Chinese. Obviously, I'm sure they were telling me, get out of South Africa, you can't be here, you are separatists, all that. I didn't know what they were saying. Murla, you were there, right? So when the door opened, I could see they all had made in China cameras, to see us run in humiliation. Oh, as the door opened, I gave them victory sign with a smile. So I walked out. They followed us, more cameras. Next day, previous day, Chinese embassy had already issued press release condemning my visit. They say, this guy doesn't know anything about Tibet, so he cannot be here. Get him out of South Africa. As South Africa is their country, I know more about Tibet than the Chinese ambassador, right? But that was the press release. So next day, Chinese embassy was planning to have a press release with a photograph. They didn't have a photograph of me and us running. They had a photograph of us with victory sign. So fortunately, there was no photograph of us. You're saying, welcome, I can come back to South Africa? Yes. This year I went. Stellenbosch Law School said, we can't host your talk. The dean and the teachers, professors, they want to, but they are under tremendous pressure from the donors who have businesses in China not to have this talk. Okay, we'll talk, yes. So it's not that easy, But, we always show up with our own flag, yeah? And we don't mind. And I was in Vilnius, we have a friend from Vilnius here, and they issued, again, Chinese embassy issued a press release. This guy doesn't know anything about Tibet, getting out of, Lithuania. So recently I was in Washington, D.C. There was a parallel delegation, in Brussels. There was a parallel delegation from China, members of National People's Congress. There's a parallel delegation. So wherever I go, I get parallel delegation from Chinese embassy or, from Beijing or some from... Oh, tomorrow we are having lunch. I said, no. Yeah, it's in the schedule. We are having lunch with the speaker. He checked, it's the mayor of Lhasa. And I said, I'm not a mayor of Lhasa. I'm a Sikyong of Dharamshala, So this is a constant challenge. But Tibetans, we show up everywhere, undeterred. Because why? We want to save you guys, okay? Where are the microphones? Okay.
Honorable Sikyong of Tibet and other honorable ministers in the hall, respected fellow participant for the 8th International Conference of Tibet Support Groups. My name is Ngawang Traishi, representing U.S. Tibet Committee and the steering committee member of International Tibet Network. I have a question all of a sudden pops up in my mind. This morning, we have launched the book, Tibet Was Not Part of China. And also, we have lots of documents and histories that Tibet was not a part of China. And this morning, Sikyong's speech also says Tibet was not part of China, and on the other hand, we are not seeking separatists. So if you think about an object, if something is not part of that particular body, then there's no point to separate, because it's not already been the part of that body. So since Tibet was not part of China, and there's no point to separate something from the China. So I felt it internally contradicting. One says Tibet was not part of China, and we are not seeking separatists. So what is your comments on that statement?
No, I think it's pretty clear. If you have a house, that house was never part of your neighbors. Right? But neighbor is too noisy, too pricky, or whatever, for whatever reason you're saying, okay, I'll share the garden with you, The garden was neighbors, not neighbors, but you want to share because you want to be kind, you want to be moderate, you want to be reasonable, because other side is very unreasonable. So historically, we are making it very clear. Tibet was never part of China. Do we deserve independence? Yes, politically, legally, historically. But we are not seeking to reach an understanding with the Chinese government to get genuine autonomy. So we must understand this, okay? We are not saying we do not seek independence, but we seek genuine autonomy. What we are saying is, if we are granted genuine autonomy, we will not seek separation from China. You must put the chronology right, So if we are given genuine autonomy, we will not seek separation from China. But Tibet was never part of China. So we are being very reasonable and moderate.
So this is the last question.
From Hong Kong.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's on.
Yes, you are loud enough.
What is your vision of true autonomy? When China first come up with the 12-point plan for Hong Kong, immediately a national security official, of course, retirement, alerted me to the 17-point agreement. And then he asked me to compare the two documents closely, and also the events that happened to Tibet afterwards. So from that point onward, I begin to be quite suspicious of China's promise to Hong Kong's autonomy. According to that document, apart from national defense and diplomacy, we're supposed to enjoy full-fledged autonomy. Now, the past 22 years saw that autonomy being eroded very substantially. And now you are mentioning you want true autonomy. Given that the Communist Party is control freak, what vision of autonomy are you expecting from them? And given that the Communist is control freak, I am not quite confident that they will grant you the autonomy that you envisage. So could you please explain what sorts of autonomy you have in mind? And my second question is, I understand that the younger generation of Tibetans are not buying very much His Holiness middle way. So how are you going to resolve this problem with your younger generation? Thank you.
Younger generation, obviously, they want more than genuine autonomy. So there's a middle way approach will not work. And this is a generational issue. I was also young. I was also leader of Tibetan Youth Congress. I've been through the same process. So, when you're young, you are quite passionate, you are more emotional. So when you're old, you become, you use your logic and rational and your head more. So, and that way, I think middle way approach, there's a policy, and middle way there is a strategy. So as a middle way, as a policy, you can debate this. You got 17-point agreement, they never implemented it, there was regression. Look at Hong Kong, there's regression. How can you trust China? They're control freak, they will never give you in the first place. Even if they give you, they will control you more. I mean, you can debate that. But then, there are so many other examples where actually it worked out. Good Friday Agreement, Northern Ireland, and as I was mentioning, South Africa. There's so many other examples where autonomous arrangements and all kinds of arrangements have worked before. In Aceh, Indonesia, right? So this is an ongoing debate. Now as far as, whether the, I'm losing my thought also. Now, whether, as far as middle way as a strategy is concerned, it's brilliant. It's quite effective. So this morning, I think some of our friends in the panel shared, our Tibetans are nonviolent. Nonviolence is the path. Middle way is the policy. There's a clarity in our narrative and clarity in our stand that helps us get space and mobility around the world. For example, we have friends from Taiwan. President of Taiwan cannot visit Delhi, cannot go to Brussels, cannot go to Washington, D.C., because the Chinese government says that Taiwan seeks independence, doesn't subscribe to one China. And many countries buy that. Taiwan, for all practical purposes, is an independent country. It has $61 billion as GDP, is one of the 20 or 21st largest economy in the world. But politically, its mobility is a lot less than CTA. CTA Sikyong can travel all over the world, not all over, many parts of the world, but President of Taiwan cannot because the Chinese government says Taiwan seeks independence, right? So middle way, because it's middle way, because it's nonviolence, there's a clarity, and we can move around the world. Now Taiwan has, I don't want to use the word luxury, but Taiwan has a space on its own because it's an island country, it's independent for all practical purpose, it can survive. But if CTA, Tibetan movement, doesn't have mobility and access, we will shrink right here in Dharamshala. So middle way gives us a space all over the world. When I say I want to go to Israel or I want to go to South Africa, anywhere, the Chinese government says stop him. He's a separatist, he is terrorist. But the whole world will say, no, they are Tibetans, they are non-violence. They pursue middle way. They seek genuine autonomy. I can't stop them. See, as a middle way, as a strategy, is brilliant. It gives us space, it gives us mobility, we can travel around the world, and given our situation, we need that. We have to keep the issue alive all over the world, right? So that's why middle way as a strategy is brilliant. As a policy, you can always say, they are control freak, they will control you, it will work, it will not work. I mean, it's an ongoing debate. I mean, even if I say, yes, Tibet is an exception, once they give us genuine autonomy, it will work. Even if I say that, you will say no, and I'll say yes, and it doesn't end, it's a never-ending debate. Because till it happens, we will never know.
Yeah, but what is your vision of autonomy?
I think you should read the book. Tibet was never part of China. There's a chapter on genuine autonomy, and all the 10, factors are listed, which defines genuine autonomy, and the territory is also defined in that. So Tibetan areas as a whole, with Tibetan language, culture, identity, education, administration, economy, will be administered by Tibetans, in a nutshell. With that note, thank you very much. I think we are running short of time, right?
Yes,
time
is up.
Sorry, thank you
very,
much.
very sorry.
We will
we have to close this session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We must also say, arigato gozaimasu. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I forgot this morning when I mentioned Mongolia, I meant Inner Mongolia. Because we have some friends from Outer Mongolia, which is an independent country, was asking me, what do you mean by Mongolia? Southern Mongolia or Inner Mongolia? Yes. Thank you.